Hello, everybody. So today in this presentation, we are going to continue our series of talks about the impact on the world and world politics of a revival of the perennial wisdom through science and the advent of true artificial intelligence and how that would affect the world, basically. And today we're going to cover Israel, Gaza, the Middle East, and that whole kind of nexus of, kind of like instability that has really, been so on the news in the past couple of months now. There's probably no part of the world where this kind of message is more relevant than the Middle East, really, a very intensely religious part of the world. And we're going to basically present a kind of information that isn't really being covered much on the news, or you don't see much on social media. And it's really this kind of esoteric hidden aspects to what's going on in the Middle East. And we're going to explain that really all the protagonists, I mean, all the kind of like movements, the ideologies, Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood, Hezbollah, religious Zionism, even the psychedelic trance party that was attacked by Hamas, there's a kind of common factor, there's a common esoteric factor behind all the protagonists you're hearing on the news every day. And we believe that once you can resurrect this esoteric factor through science, then really that's the game changer. That really is what's going to kind of solve this most wicked of wicked problems. The sociologists call wicked problems that seem completely intractable. Okay. One of the reasons why the Middle East problems seem so intractable because of this religious dimension. It's like you're trying to solve a kind of Rubik cube puzzle, but some of those puzzle blocks, those religious puzzle blocks, they don't turn, they don't move, so the puzzle seems completely unchangeable. Okay, so we think that there's going to be a dramatic kind of a shift in the world of religion happening very, very soon. Okay, and that the puzzle blocks will move. Now, interestingly, the problems we have today in the Middle East have come about through reforms of religion that actually have happened quite recently. Okay, so many people find the idea of a Shiite Iranian theocratic state problematic, including some Iranians. But that came about as a kind of reform that happened in 1979. Because historically, for hundreds of years, it was absolutely forbidden in Shia Islam for the clerics, the clergy, to enter into politics. And Ayatollah Khomeini, he changed that in 1979. Not all the kind of Shia clerics agree with him, actually, by the way. The fact that there is religious Zionism, okay, for hundreds of years, it was absolutely forbidden for Jews to return to Israel and form a state or even pray in Temple Mount until the coming of the Messiah. Okay, so we can see a kind of parallel. Shia don't enter into politics until the coming of Imam Mahdi, and Jews are not allowed to found a state of Israel until the coming of the Messiah. It's kind of parallel, isn't it? Interesting. And the idea that there is a Christian Zionism, kind of like waiting for a second coming of Christ, that's literally Jesus, big Jesus in the sky, dispensationalism lifted up in the sky in a kind of protective rapture, and we have to. The Christian Zionists have to support the full occupation of Israel and the return of the Jews to Israel for second coming of Christ to come. That whole theology really is a modern, well, not modern, it was a 19th century innovation, okay, that really didn't exist before that. It was completely invented. It was just made up, okay. So the problems we have in the Middle East today have largely come about through revisions of religion. But the only way you're going to solve the problem with what we have now is a fundamental revolution to happen in the world of religion. And this is very, very necessary. Okay, so we think this is what is really the solution. There is, two-state solution, war. These are not solutions. They're not really, unless you solve the religious dimension, there is no solution. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. And I hope by the end of this little presentation, you can see a kind of like a clear path, even though it's still hard. It's you can see a way that this wicked, intractable problem can finally be cracked. Okay, this revolution in religion is generally is this is what the message is all about. So this series of talks is just application of this recovery of the perennial wisdom, non-duality, through science and the advent of true artificial intelligence and how it's going to impact on the world. What we need to do now is just go through all the protagonists in the Middle East and just show exactly what that kind of esoteric aspect is, and then go through it in detail, and also show this very, very strong prophetic aspects to do with the Mahdi, to do with the Messiah, and even the kind of I don't like to use the expression second coming of Christ, because it kind of conjures up images of big Jesus in the sky, you know, the kind of evangelical interpretation of it. I mean, there's a protagonist in the book of Revelation. I think that protagonist in the Bible, also in other places like the Gospel of St. John, I think that is quite in tune with predictions of a Mahdi or Messiah character, because I think there is an interpretation which is actually sensible, not big Jesus in the sky. And we think, these beliefs, esoteric and prophetic beliefs, really are the driving force in the Middle East. Unless you understand this factor, there is absolutely no way you can, understand what's actually going on in Israel, Gaza, Iran, Lebanon, Syria, etc. Okay, we're going to go through a kind of like survey of esoteric, prophetic Middle East beliefs. Okay, and it's really important because all the protagonists are involved in this kind of a worldview, this kind of mystical prophetic outlook. We'll start with Israel. We'll start with Judaism. Okay, now there's a common ground in Kabbalah, the so-called hidden teachings of Moses. Okay, this is the kind of esoteric dimension to Judaism. All the three major kind of reforms or kind of movements, religious movements that have appeared in Judaism in the past few hundred years, okay, the Sabbatean Messianic movement that appeared in Turkey in the 17th century, the Hasidic movement, which we see, like the Hasidic Jews, which we see in a lot of North London living here, that we, what we understand as Orthodox Judaism, the kind of archaic Eastern European dress, the kind of like black robes, kind of furry hats and the sideburns and stuff. That is a Hasidic movement which emerged in the 18th century in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. Okay, so again, that like the kind of Sabbatean Messianic movement, it was derived from Kabbalah. It was derived from the hidden teachings of Moses. And the third movement, which is the movement brought about by a rabbi called Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook. This was an early 20th century movement which gave rise really to religious Zionism. Okay, the first Zionists were actually atheist and left-wing, and Rabbi Kook, the elder Abraham Isaac Kook, observed what was happening in Israel, and he tried to kind of like reinterpret a kind of the traditional theology about the Messiah. And he kind of made amendments to say that basically, yeah, look, basically the return of Israel is already happening. So maybe we should revise the kind of like traditional theology. He was opposed by the other Orthodox rabbis. But obviously now, with the events of the Second World War, the Holocaust and stuff, things have transpired whereby this theology made more sense and gained more currency, and is now really driving kind of politics in Israel to a very, very powerful extent. Okay, so this movement, this revision, has given rise to the kind of like, if there's a kind of Orthodox Judaism, this has given rise to what's called the kind of radical ultra-Orthodox. This is behind the kind of Gush Imonim, the Likud party, the kind of whole settler theology, and it's kind of like it is a new movement. But again, it's derived from the Kabbalah. So Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook was steeped in the Kabbalah, the hidden teachings of Moses. Okay, again, it's esoteric dimension. There is actually a fourth kind of recent movement in Judaism, which I think is really important, and it's and we saw it on our TV screens, a couple of months ago, and it's basically the Israeli psychedelic trance scene. It's part of a wider worldwide psychedelic trance movement. Okay, and it's in Israel. It's really, really popular. So I understand that psychedelic trance is as popular as normal pop music is in the West. It's really in the West it's more like an underground scene, but in Israel it's really like a big deal. Giving preparing for this talk, I learned that the headlining act of the Nova Festival that got attacked by Hamas on 7th of October, the headlining act was astral projection. Okay. I was quite stunned to learn this because in my youth, I met astral projection about 26 years ago because I was playing with this psychedelic trance band based in the UK, a guy called Bill Halsey and Cosmosis, and actually shared the same stage with astral projection in a party in Liverpool 1998, because astral projection back then and Cosmosis were on the same record label, and I was playing guitar for the live shows for Cosmosis for I did a stint, lasted about a year. And so it's kind of funny. It's kind of like small world kind of thing. Anyway, in my youth, I really got to know the scene inside out. And I really met a lot of these people. And a lot of those people I saw on TV, the kind of party goers who were, partying and obviously the horrible things that happened afterwards. These were exactly the kind of people I'd been hanging out with in my 20s. So it's kind of funny. Yeah, it's funny that realization, because it really took me back and got me thinking a lot. And anyway, this psychedelic trance scene is actually a major, I think, kind of aspect of Israeli life, but also Israeli religious life, because it is a kind of like the revival of the kind of like the manna ritual or sect or cult or rites of the ancient Israelites. So there's an interpretation of the manna in the Bible as a psychedelic sacrament, that it, tasted of wafers made of honey. It looked like resin. It was like white, like coriander seed. It essentially looked like psychedelic substances. Okay, it is a psychedelics. It is about psychedelics. Anyway, the modern day, what I'm trying to say, the modern day psychedelic trance scene is a kind of religious revival of something in the Bible that the ancient Israelites indulged in. Okay, which takes us to prophecies. Okay, so in Israel, in Judaism, the major other factor, apart from this esotericism, is this expectation of the Messiah and prophecies. I mean, the fact that there is a modern day psychedelic trance scene in the world and also in Israel is actually the fulfillment of prophecy. Okay, this I'll just get all the psychedelic stuff out of the way, keep it in one place, okay, because some people think it's a bit frivolous, but it's not. It's actually very important part of the world religion, I think, and the current situation in Israel. Okay, so in the book of Revelation, at the end of the Bible, there is a prophecy which says, okay, to him that overcometh, I will give to him dominion over all the nations. Okay, is a reference to the second coming of Christ. And to him that overcometh, I will give to him a portion of the hidden manna. Okay, so the manna, this substance, this psychedelic substance in the Old Testament, returns at the end of times. Now, why is the manna hidden? Why is the manna hidden? The manna is hidden because, as it says in the book of Hebrews, the manna was contained in the Ark of the Covenant together with one rod of Aaron. Now, the manna is hidden because the Ark of the Covenant was hidden by the prophet Jeremiah during the invasion by the Babylonians, 586 BC, and it's never been found. Now, when the Ark of the Covenant is found, it will be one of the greatest historical finds of all time, along with Genghis Khan's tomb. Okay, so anyway, that's why the manna is hidden. But what the prophecy is saying is that the manna will return, and in a sense, it has returned through the revival of the kind of manna kind of ritual rites in Israel, in Israeli psychedelic trance. Now, interestingly, there was a book called The Mystery of Manna by an author, Dan Merker of Toronto University. And the book is about the hypothesis that the manna was actually ergot, psychedelic substance ergot. That would be fascinating and amazing, because LSD was first synthesized from ergot. So if the manna was ergot, then quite literally, 1945, the hidden manna has literally returned in its same kind of substance form. It doesn't matter if it's exactly ergot or not. I mean, the fact is that basically in Israel, in Judaism, and worldwide over, I mean, basically the ancient mystery rites of taking these substances has made a comeback. And the modern manifestation of the manna kind of cult or rite in Judaism is Israeli psychedelic trance. And the return of the Dionysian kind of mysteries of Mithras for the Western world is really the rest of the kind of the Western psychedelic trance scene, I believe. So that's all the kind of like psychedelic stuff out of the way. In Judaism, there's a real, and in Israel, there's a real kind of like feverish expectation for the coming of the Messiah. So, you know, tales of the red heifer in the kind of prophecies, or even attempts to kind of import red heifers to try and breed an absolutely pure red heifer. So people trying to hasten the coming of the Messiah and actually bring about the conditions of the prophecies, and, you know, to reconstruct the temple, destroying the Al-Aqsa Mosque, etc. I mean, it's really driving politics, but there's a real kind of feverish expectation for the coming of the Messiah. Actually, you know, in the psychedelic scene, and this will be true for the Israeli psychedelic scene, I really do know this scene like really, really well. People in that scene who think they are the Messiah or are Messiah candidates, who have had experiences of being one with God, one with Yahweh, and who might go on to, you know, do kind of like attempt some kind of religious mission. It's really common. Okay, it's really common in the psychedelic scene. I don't have any doubt in the Israeli psychedelic scene there are many budding messiahs. Okay, but anyway, I mean, one prominent messiah was the Reb. Okay, we talked about Hasidic Judaism, but there's an offshoot, the Chabad Lubavitcher Hasidim. There's a Rabbi Menachem Schneerson. Okay, he died about 20 years ago, was it? And his followers in Brooklyn, the kind of like Chabad Hasidic Jews, thought he was the Messiah. Okay, he didn't quite claim to be the Messiah, and there is a tradition in Chabad Judaism, Hasidic Judaism, where in every generation there is a Messiah. What's relevant is that basically Netanyahu, before he was prime minister, met the Reb, Menachem Schneerson. Menachem Schneerson, before Netanyahu became prime minister, he predicted that, I mean, he predicted that you, Benjamin Netanyahu, will become the prime minister of Israel, and he predicted, and his prediction was right. But the Reb also made a prophecy, I guess you'd say, that Netanyahu would welcome the coming of the Messiah, whether that meant himself, the Reb, or, you know, some other character to come soon. Anyway, the main thing is that there is a feverish expectation for the coming of the Messiah in Israel and in kind of ultra-Orthodox Judaism in some of the sects. Okay, so that's the main thing. Now we're going to move on to Islam. Okay, Islam, you know, all the kind of groups you're hearing about, Hezbollah, Iran, Syria, the Hamas Muslim Brotherhood, behind all these groups is mystical Islam. It's basically Shiaism, Sufism, basically. So, I mean, you know, it's this tiny subset of Islam. Most Islam consists of Sunnis, and this kind of mystical dimension is really quite suppressed, really, I should say. And the kind of mystical component is really a tiny proportion. Shia are 15% of all Muslims, and Sufism are like little groups within Sunni Islam. But the thing is, in the Middle East, Shiites are 36% roughly of all the population in the Middle East, including Saudi Arabia and Iran, etc. And Sufism is very, very strong in the Middle East and also in Turkey as well. The important point is that all the protagonists, Hezbollah, are Shiites. The Alawites of Syria are also Shiites. And interestingly, the situation in Syria is the Assads, the Alawites, Shiite Assads were for many decades were helped into power. Well, there's a kind of power axis are helped to maintain power by the Naqshbandi Sufi order in Syria. So there's a kind of collaboration between the Shiites, the Alawites, and the Naqshbandi Sufis, and they kind of, you know, they kind of help each other. They kind of keep each other they kind of keep each other in power, really. I mean, basically, they are the esotericists who might fare not so well in a kind of Sunni state. So anyway, so Syria is very, very kind of the mystics are in charge. Hezbollah, they're basically a Shia militia. Okay, the Muslim Brotherhood is from which Hamas is an offshoot. Now, I'm not saying the Muslim Brotherhoods are necessarily all mystics or whatever. And I don't want to wade into really I'm wading into very controversial territory here. But the origins of the Muslim Brotherhood, the origins are essentially Sufism. Okay, Hassan al-Banna was a Sufi master in Egypt. And the main martyr of the Muslim Brotherhood, Sayyid Qutb, okay, his name, Qutb, the word Qutb, it means, it's a Sufi kind of expression. It's a Sufi word meaning a Qutb is basically a human being who's like the interface between humankind and God. And at every generation, a Qutb would appear. A secret Qutb would be the kind of like transmission from God to the Sufi orders and to humanity. So, okay, now Sayyid Qutb dabbled with Marxism, Leninism, and he really kind of like explored Western philosophy. But he's criticized. I'm not saying he was necessarily totally involved in Sufism, but he's critiqued for having sympathies with. I read an article of the people of Wada al-Wujud, which means Sufis and Shia. So definitely he was dabbling or was sympathetic towards that end. And there's no way he could have not known the meaning of his name, Qutb. Okay, so there really is this kind of like a route to the Muslim Brotherhood, and and the offshoot is one of the offshoots is Hamas. Historically, there has been an interaction between the Muslim Brotherhood in terms of ideology and Iran and the Shiites of Iran, because Ayatollah Khomeini was actually quite influenced by Sayyid Qutb's writings, okay, which were revolutionary. And the current supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, was the guy who translated Sayyid Qutb's work from Arabic into Persian. So there really is this kind of tight connection between the kind of Muslim Brotherhood and the kind of revolutionary Shia of Iran. And then vice versa, Hamas and the kind of the suicide bombings which happened in Israel, the horrific suicide bombings which happened in the 90s in Israel, they were in fact influenced by, they came from the Shia. Okay, so the Hamas are actually Sunnis with a kind of mystical root in the Muslim Brotherhood in Hassan al-Banna and Sayyid Qutb. But then there's a kind of two-way exchange of ideas from the kind of Muslim Brotherhood to Iranian Shiism and vice versa. This kind of whole thing about martyrdom and suicide bombing actually came from Shia Islam. During the Iran-Iraq war, okay, martyrdom and kind of like involved basically, Iranian Shia walking through minefields to clear the way for the tanks. That is it's hardcore, isn't it? That's hardcore. Let's dwell on kind of Shia Islam more, because it's really important. Because people, commentaries I've been hearing recently about the situation in Gaza, Israel, they say, why don't Hezbollah attack? Why don't Iran take revenge for the killing of their general a couple of years ago by Trump? It's because there's an aspect of Shia Islam which is quietist. They are basically, they take the bombings, they themselves are killed, but they suppress their revenge, they suppress their anger in a sense. They kind of hold back. They are quietist. They're not aggressive. I know, I'll probably lose people for saying this, because there's this perception that Shiites are kind of like warlike and aggressive. But it's complicated. It's complicated. What it is, I'll explain what's happening. Okay, what's happening is this. Okay, there is this festival called Ashura. Okay, and it's basically the Ashura festival, which is really important in Shia Islam. It's basically it is the remembering what's called the Passion of Hussein, who was Muhammad's grandson. And what it is, it's this. It's basically in the early Islam, basically. Couple of generations after Muhammad, basically Hussein was challenging the caliphate, which was corrupt. And what happened was that the Shiites, the party of Ali, they basically were supposed to come help Hussein, but they didn't come. Okay, they held back, and then Hussein was slaughtered on the plains of Karbala. And then there's this idea that something was lost in Islam, something true and just was lost and was never regained. Okay. Now, Ashura is this festival which Sunnis really criticize because it is quite gory. It's when Shia whip themselves and, draw blood and cut themselves and, really hurt themselves during Ashura. And I've even seen videos of people having nails banged into their skulls, actually piercing the bone and stuff. So it's really hardcore. They are basically punishing themselves for not coming to the aid of Hussein 1300 years ago. Now, I know some people think, why are you beating yourselves up over, this thing? Okay, there's regrets, but, you don't have to hurt yourselves and, mutilate yourselves over something that happened 1300 years ago. Well, the reason why they do it is not a retrospective thing. It's basically to remind themselves, but also to prepare themselves for the coming of the Mahdi. Because the hidden message of Ashura is that one day when the Mahdi comes, we will absolutely be ready and we will not let the Mahdi down. Do you see? It's really like a powerful ceremony that's actually future looking. And it means that the Shia are just really, once they are activated, they are probably, if martyrdom means walking through a minefield to clear the way for the tanks, a Shiite army armed with high-tech weapons that is not afraid of death, that is a kind of frightening force. In fact, the Shia are like the Fremen of Dune. Dune, which is all about Muslim prophecies set in the kind of sci-fi novel. The Fremen are the force that can challenge the Emperor's Sardaukar warriors. They're a fearsome fighting force that can even defeat the Sardaukar. Okay, so there is a kind of like force in Islam which is quietist. It's waiting for a signal, the coming of Imam Mahdi. And when it happens, it's going to be quite terrifying. Okay. But, what this talk is about is really about peace. It's how can we, kind of deflect these energies into something, kind of like peaceful. So we have okay. So, okay, that's the esoteric aspect. And we covered a bit of the kind of prophetic aspect by talking about the Ashura kind of, a festival that happens every year. The expectations for the coming of the Imam Mahdi, there's a feverish expectation for the coming of Imam Mahdi in many sectors of the Muslim world, not just the Shia or Sunni. I was quite surprised to learn in some recent research that a recent Pew poll, Pew research poll, found that even in a country like Turkey, 68% of all respondents polled believe that the Imam Mahdi will come in their lifetimes. In Iraq, it's in the low 70s. I think it's 72, 73%. No figures for Iran, but you can guess that in Iran it's going to be similar or even higher. In Afghanistan, it's in like 83%. What it means is that there really is this kind of like, along with a feverish expectation for the coming of the Messiah in Judaism, there is something equivalent in Islam, a feverish expectation for the coming of Imam Mahdi. Okay, so it gets interesting, doesn't it? It gets really kind of interesting. What we think is that there is a way by which you can turn these energies, these expectations, in a completely rational way to resolve the situation in the Middle East. So even though secular people might think, can we not get rid of religion? Can we not get rid of these wild, wacky beliefs? It's not going to happen because it's so intrinsic to the worldviews of the people involved in this, in this wicked, most intractable of political, social problems. Okay, but we think there is a perfectly rational route through a kind of rational recovery of the perennial wisdom, this esoteric tradition, what is essentially Kabbalah, Shia Islam, and Sufism, through science and philosophy and mathematics, together with the advent of true AI, which can truly resolve the situation. And there's a kind of order of execution by how this might happen. Okay, in the West, in the kind of like Europe, America, which is largely atheistic or kind of turning away from religion, which might seem separate from ideas of Imam Mahdis and messiahs and esoteric religion, Kabbalah, Shiism, Sufism. You know, there's kind of like similar expectations, which are completely scientific and technological. Okay. So there's a feverish expectation in the West for the advent of true artificial intelligence, what has been called the technological singularity. Ray Kurzweil, the technologist, gives a date of 2029. Elon Musk thinks it's going to arrive 3 to 6 years' time before the end of the decade. Many commentators, Shane Legg of DeepMind, by 2030, John Carmack, a great programmer who's entered into the AI race, again, by 2030. So this really is this kind of like expectation of this coming technological singularity, this so-called apocalypse for nerds or rapture for geeks, such a huge event that is even talked about in biblical terms, okay? And together with this, in the West, there is a rational expectation for some kind of figure to arrive, what they call a kind of Newton of the 21st century. This is coming from many people. For instance, Gary Marcus, the neuroscientist, cognitive scientist, he talks about the coming Newton of neuroscience and a Newton of artificial intelligence. Okay. Fei-Fei Li, the Stanford professor who invented ImageNet, talks about machine learning being pre-Newtonian. Okay. Brian Arthur, who is a kind of a complexity economist, talks about a coming Newton of algorithmic science. And Melanie Mitchell, who is another complexity theorist, artificial intelligence commentator, talks about a Newton of complexity science. Okay. Could it be that there's kind of like a Newton of the 21st century? Now, Newton was also called the last magus. Could this 21st century Newton also be the return of magus action, i.e. Renaissance magic, which is essentially identical to Kabbalah, to the beliefs of Shia Islam and Sufism? Okay, could it be the case? So we can couple this rational expectation with what's happening in the Middle East and these expectations for the Messiah and Mahdi to form a kind of picture which is completely rational. We believe that there can be a de facto Mahdi, a de facto Messiah, which can potentially prepare the way for an historical Messiah or Mahdi that can actually be accepted by Muslims and Jews. Okay, so this is the tricky bit. Okay, this is the hard bit. Okay, so we think that there can be a de facto Mahdi and Messiah. Then we have to go into religion to actually see what is expected. What does that person actually have to do? There's been many Mahdis and Messiahs have appeared in the past. Even Jesus is considered as fulfillment of, Jewish prophecy. Jews don't think that. The founder of the Baha'i sect, the Ahmadi, these are kind of like kind of Mahdi candidates who are accepted by their followers of these religions as being the Mahdi. But there's a difference between forming a cult or a sect or a major religion and the followers believing you're the Mahdi or the Messiah, and what I call de facto Mahdi and Messiah. What the de facto Mahdi and Messiah has to bring about this final revelation. Okay, there is a kind of recurring story in world religion. If there are these hidden mysteries, the hidden teachings of Moses, the hidden teachings of Muhammad, the hidden teachings of Jesus, Buddha, etc., there is this idea that over time, eventually, at the end of time, these mysteries will be revealed. So, for instance, in Judaism, in Book of Daniel, which is a prophetic work, Daniel was told to kind of shut up the prophecies as in a scroll, close the scroll, and then until the end of time, and then at the end of time, the scroll will be opened. Which is the story is continued in the book of Revelation, where you have the scroll of 7 seals, where events unfold in world history, and the seals are slowly removed until you have this final revelation. They have this apocalypse, which means the unveiling of the hidden thing. Now, what is this hidden thing, if not the truth hidden behind all world religion? And what the prophecies really say is that the Messiah, the Mahdi, has to reveal this knowledge. If he doesn't reveal this knowledge, then that person is not de facto Mahdi or Messiah. So in the Zohar, which is the central book of the Kabbalah, the most important work of the Kabbalah, the Zohar, the words of splendor, it is written that the Messiah will reveal deep secrets of the Torah. And in the Midrash, which is accumulated commentaries on the Torah, it is written that the Torah of the Messiah will make the Torah of today seem like naught, seem like nothing. And in both instances, in Zohar and the Midrash, there's a quote from the Bible, Isaiah 11:9, which goes, the knowledge of God will fill the earth as the water covers the oceans. So there's a major kind of revealing of religious spiritual knowledge with the coming of the Messiah. And we have the exact parallel in Islam. With the coming of the Mahdi, there's a prophecy given by Muhammad. He said that all knowledge exists as 27 letters, and that in his time, only 2 of those letters have been revealed. But when the Imam Mahdi comes, this person with supreme knowledge, all 27 letters, the other 25, will have been revealed. Okay. And in Christianity, there really is this idea of a paraclete in John, a kind of like someone who will come along to remind, kind of like reaffirm what's been taught in the New Testament, but also teach all things. And there's a kind of tortured explanation of this paraclete spirit of truth in this Gospel of John given by evangelicals, but there's a far more rational explanation given that we can give that actually matches the explanations of what the Mahdi and Messiah have to do. That makes this kind of prediction in Gospel of St. John and Book of Revelation totally fit with the predictions of the coming Messiah and the coming Imam Mahdi. And it is this idea that this person reveals these mysteries of God, reveals these mysteries essentially of the perennial wisdom which keeps returning, keeps getting lost, keeps returning, getting lost, is finally explained through reason, through scientific concepts, and it becomes firmly established. Okay, so we think that once you establish the perennial wisdom through reason, through science, then this gives the basis for a reform of all knowledge. So the prophecy in Isaiah that the knowledge of God will fill the earth as the water covers the oceans, what it means is that once you recover the perennial wisdom through science and mathematics and pure reason, and you use that to reform all knowledge, this recurring idea in the Renaissance that all knowledge is reformed in light of the perennial wisdom, what it means is that all knowledge becomes the knowledge of God. All history, cosmology, etc., it all becomes the knowledge of God. And that way, the world is filled with the knowledge of God as the water covers the oceans. That is a rational interpretation of these prophecies. With that, we include what's also predicted by Muhammad, that there will be a new Sharia. There will be a rational basis for ethics and morality, a new Sharia, that according to Salama, who is one of his wives, another Hadith tradition, she said that Muhammad said that this new Sharia will be free from superstition. So new Sharia based on rationality, free from superstition. Okay. Which is exactly echoed in the Kabbalah, in the Jewish tradition, where is predicted that the Messiah will provide a rational basis for morality. Now, interestingly, this is exactly what Nietzsche predicts for Übermensch. Okay, now Nietzsche famously wrote that God is dead, but he also wrote that you've lost the foundations of your morality and ethics. You've also lost your, kind of ultimate purpose and meaning in life by getting rid of God. And he kind of like speculated that the Übermensch would actually, kind of like restore ethics and morality and meaning and purpose, which is exactly what is predicted for the Messiah and the Mahdi. So you see a convergence of ideas, okay? So a kind of revealing of mystical knowledge, a kind of moral, ethical reform, new Sharia, a new kind of like a rational basis of morality. That is a major thing that the Messiah and Mahdi has to do to be de facto Mahdi. Now there's another kind of like a major thing which needs to happen to satisfy the prophecies, and it is this material transformation of the planets. Okay, so it's not just about kind of spiritual knowledge and everyone's spiritual and then people are better off spiritually. There's actually a physical transformation of the planet. There is a new heaven, but also a new earth. And we think that this physical transformation of the planet exactly has to do with the advent of artificial intelligence, true artificial intelligence, and the advent of this technological singularity. If expressions like apocalypse for nerds, rapture for geeks is already being used to describe the advent of artificial intelligence, we think it goes far deeper. We think it's not just like analogous. We think it is the fulfillment of prophecy. There was a joint statement by leading scientists and technologists, the late great Stephen Hawking, Max Tegmark of MIT, Frank Wilczek, Nobel Prize winner, and Stuart Russell, who's an artificial intelligence luminary. They wrote a joint statement saying that the coming of AI is the biggest event in human history. Exact words, the biggest event in human history. But that's exactly what the prophecies in world religion are about, the biggest event in human history, the great happening to happen in the future. And this idea of age of abundance, of basically finally the economic problem is solved. Now recently Elon Musk said, okay, he said with the advent of AI, he expects it to happen in 3 to 6 years. Okay, that quote, will have universal high income, not just universal basic income, will be in an age of abundance. Okay, that's a technologist talking about the implications of AI. Now, Muhammad in Hadith, he says, with the coming of the Mahdi, quote, at that time, men will not find anywhere to give their charity or to be generous because riches will encompass all. And he also said in another Hadith, possessions will be in abundance then, flowing like water, yet no one will condescend to take any. What we think is that these prophecies for a kind of new heaven, new earth, a kind of physical transformation of the planet, and in the book of Revelation, they shall thirst no more, they shall hunger no more, the sun shall not strike them, nor any scorching heat. This literally physical transformation of the human condition is exactly what technologists predict will be the implication, if done right, of the advent of true artificial intelligence. Okay, and we think it's not a parallel. We think it's the same thing. We think that basically the prophecies of of this physical transformation, this advent of this biggest event in the human history, they are essentially it's the same thing. They are the same subject. Okay, for real, happening in real terms. Okay. Now, okay, so we have de facto Mahdi, de facto Messiah, the kind of literal physical transformation of the planet, a literal apocalypse, the unveiling of the hidden thing. Now, that isn't quite enough to, okay, back to Gaza, Israel, to settle the problem in the Middle East, because it's not quite good enough to have a de facto Mahdi Messiah. You got to basically have a historic Mahdi Messiah that Muslims will accept as the Mahdi and Jews will accept as the Messiah. Okay, at this point, I got to say, look, I got to basically say that what I believe is that this thing is like a baton race. Okay, so basically everyone who wants to partake in this kind of thing is a runner. So no one claims the Mahdi or claims to be the Messiah. What we do is we're like a runner in this baton race, and we do what we can. We pass the baton over to the next runner, or part of this joint work. Now, if someone eventually comes along and that person thinks they can finish the finish line, I think they should. But it's not about claiming to be the Messiah or claiming to be the Mahdi, but it's really to contribute to a joint work and do productive things towards the creation of artificial intelligence and the promotion of these sorts of ideas to, kind of bring about peace and reconciliation and to revive spiritual ideas for the 21st century. And that's what I think it should be about. And that's really the roots. And if someone claims to be the Mahdi or claims to be the Messiah, then I say be suspicious, be very suspicious. Okay, and what we can do is be inspired by the Mahdi archetype, be inspired by the Messiah archetype. It's like the passage in the Corpus Mescum, believe in yourself that nothing is impossible. They can understand every art, every science, and the manner and custom of every living thing. And really to be inspired by the archetype, this archetype, the mythic quest hero, the archetype of the Renaissance magus, but use that inspiration to do productive things, okay, for the betterment of humanity and all that. Okay, so I had to make that clear. Because now we're going to basically explain that there really is a path by which the de facto Mahdi and Messiah can then go on to become the political, actual, historic Mahdi Messiah for Jews and Muslims. Okay, this is the fascinating bit. This is the really fascinating bit. And okay, we'll start with Judaism. There really is a kind of like, once you have a kind of de facto Mahdi, or sorry, de facto Messiah for Jews, okay, there is actually a very kind of like almost like an interface by which the creator of true artificial intelligence and someone who actually works out kind of body, brain, the body, you know, what a human is, effectively decode the image of God, that we're made in God's image, why that person should have a special entry point into political Judaism. It's like Elon Musk getting an audience with Netanyahu, and because he's a technologist and he can influence affairs, and he's basically does great things. There is a way by which the creator of true artificial intelligence and someone who can really be like de facto Messiah can become like the political Messiah and actually gain influence within Israel and actually resolve the situation, because there is a deep relationship between artificial intelligence and Israel and Judaism. It's not just Netanyahu in a recent panel who was interviewed actually with Elon Musk and a couple of other luminaries, Max Tegmark as well, who said, Netanyahu jokes, I know I'll alienate some of my audience by mentioning Netanyahu. So we're not taking any sides here. We're not on one side or the other. Okay, I've got to make that very clear. Anyway, Netanyahu jokes that AI stands for America and Israel. So that's very kind of like there is a kind of disproportionate influence in AI to do with Israel. Elias Skiva is Israeli research. He's for a top name in backpropagation research transformers. And but there's an even deeper level by which Judaism kind of provides an interface for the coming of true AI. Now there's a legend of the Golem. Okay, there's a legend of the Golem. It goes like this. Okay, there's a Rabbi Lowe in 15th century Prague, Czechoslovakia, and it's just a story. He was a historical character, and the legend, the story is that he created a golem to protect Jews from pogroms, from being killed by the local Czech kind of people. Pogroms where in times of trouble, Jews would just get slaughtered by the local populations. Anyway, he created this golem to protect the Jews from pogrom, and when the golem kind of died, this kind of likeness of a person, he put it in the attic in Prague synagogue. Okay, so it's a story. Now, one of the kind of stories goes that basically the golem will be awakened by a special code word. Okay, a special code word will awaken the golem one day. And another story goes that basically when the golem is awakened, the golem has a kind of like expression on his forehead, and the expression is Yahweh Elohim Emet. And then what the golem does, Yahweh Elohim Emet, is God the Lord is great. That's what it means. Okay, God the Lord is great. And what the golem does when he's awakened is that he takes off the aleph off the emet, and that changes the expression to God the Lord is dead. Okay, now it's just a parable. The parable continues like this. The people are shocked. They ask the golem, why is God dead? And the golem replies, look, I'm the golem. You've created, humankind has created someone like me, a likeness of the human being. Now we adore God because God has created us in his image. And that's why we adore him, something as amazing as a human being in his image. And that when we have created a true golem, a true likeness of a human being. Therefore, we've decoded the image of God. And therefore, there's not so much reason to adore God anymore. So he might as well be dead. It's just a parable. The main point is that once we create the golem, create simulacra, create artificial intelligence, create, a perfect robot, a perfect likeness of ourselves, then effectively we have decoded the image of God. We have understood the image of God. In MIT is the university in America, probably one of the two top universities in the world, along with Tsinghua in China, technological science universities in the world. Okay, it was essentially the university created by Jews who were forbidden or, just weren't allowed to go to Harvard. So they created an even better university, MIT. So there's a real close relationship between Judaism and MIT. Anyway, according to Anne Faust, who is the kind of theological advisor at MIT, she said basically in the MIT science, the artificial intelligence computer science lab, she said that 4 of the people there, including the provost of MIT, were direct descendants of Rabbi Lowe of the Prague synagogue. And she said that that there were several people in the AI lab, including Marvin Minsky, who were given the code name for waking up the golem in their bar mitzvahs. Okay, what it means is that the story of the golem of creating a likeness of the image of God, and that being somehow having religious overtones, it does connect the modern world of AI. And it allows basically the true creator of AI then to go back into Judaism and say, look, this really is the image of God. This really is something significant. It just allows a de facto Messiah to have an entry into influencing affairs in Israel. There's many parts. I'll go for another one. Rabbi Kook the Elder, Abraham Isaac Kook, who really was the source of a kind of religious Zionism. Okay, this is interesting to kind of form a bridge between kind of Judaism and the secular, original left-wing secular Zionists. He used science and evolution in particular to form a bridge, and he interpreted science and evolution as being not incompatible with the Kabbalah. He kind of interpreted within the Kabbalah framework. What it means is that you can go the other way. Once you have a complete understanding of evolution, a complete understanding of kind of mind, brain, body, ontogenesis, and a theory of evolution, you can go vice versa and use that as a bridge back into religious Judaism and Kabbalah, I believe. Okay. Now, okay, so we think once you have this de facto Messiah, de facto Mahdi that get into kind of Israeli affairs, there is the problem of the de facto Imam Mahdi becoming accepted as the kind of historic Mahdi for the Muslims. This is the hard bit. But we are helped. This is incredible. We are helped by prophecies given by Muhammad. Okay, this is truly amazing because over the years I've been collecting prophecies concerning the Mahdi and kind of piecing together pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. Just recently, I got hold of a book. You can download it off the internet. It's called. It's by a character called. Okay, let me give you some background. It's by Adnan Otkar. It is by many Western kind of people interested in esoteric will know him as Huran Yeya. Okay, when I was first doing the public talks in the early noughties, many people would come, talk about Huran Yeya, give me his books. They're very well produced books, very, very high quality books, and they're really about Islam, about kind of like a religion. I don't agree with all his ideas, but he produced a very good book called Jesus and Hazrat Mahdi. Okay, it's not actually about Jesus. Most of it's about Imam Mahdi. It's 1,100 pages long. It's a very thick book and quite a chunky PDF. Okay, what he has done is he's really kind of really compiled a kind of massive cache of prophecies about Imam Mahdi to incredible detail. one of the reasons why we can be kind of confident about the kind of faithfulness and the authenticity of his research is this. This is interesting. He's basically in jail for 8,000 years in a Turkish jail. Okay, a few years ago, the Turkish authorities, for whatever reason, for whatever kind of explanations, really wanted to take him down. Really wanted to, get this guy imprisoned. Okay, there was a kind of, it was questionable. The legal process was questionable. He went through 2 appeals, so his kind of 9,000-year sentence got knocked down to kind of 8,500 years, and he got knocked down to kind of 8,000 years. Well, he's still in prison anyway. So the actual charges he was in prison for, they are questionable. They may or may not be. It has kind of Julian Assange kind of overtones, kind of, maybe not. But the main thing is that if the Turkish Islamist authorities could have nailed him on falsifying hadith or inventing sayings of Muhammad, then that is what they would have done. So you can be absolutely sure that they would have pored over all his writings looking for, kind of like things that were made up or whatever. That is what he was put in prison for. Okay. It means that basically we can have confidence in his cult, if you like. His people he worked with were the kind of like sons and daughters of the kind of elites of Turkish society, and lots of them were very clever, and they kind of like kind of scoured the kind of literature to research his books. So the books are actually very well researched. Anyway, a book of his I got recently about the Mahdi contains a kind of wealth of prophecies, and I was just shocked to really learn how detailed the prophecies for the coming Imam Mahdi are. I already knew actually I gave a talk in September about Esoteric and Prophetic Islam, but since October the 7th, I've been really kind of researching more, because I've really been, my head's really been diverted into that area. And, really researching this book I got, and also other sources. It's astounding the level of detail that Muhammad has provided for this Imam Mahdi character. And we believe that this is really what can really, make the de facto Mahdi, who does all this other stuff in science and artificial intelligence, become the accepted Mahdi in Islam. Okay. Muhammad actually gave specific dates for the coming of Mahdi. And one of those dates he gave, now the nature of hadith is basically the recollections of people. So they're a bit fuzzy. Some people recollect this, and some people recollect something slightly different. Okay. Now, one date he gave was the Hajj year 1400. So Islamic calendar 1400, which is 1979 or 1980, because it's a lunar calendar. And so one of the prophecies, one of the hadith interpretations, is that the Mahdi appears 1979. Okay. Another hadith, a slightly different recollection, is this. Okay, I'll quote it. Quote, count 2 or 3 decades after the year Hajj 1400. At that time, the Imam Mahdi emerges. Okay, so that is 20 to 30 years. It's basically 1999, 2000 to 2009, 2010. Now, why is that significant? Why is that significant? We think it's very significant because we think there is a perfect match between the expectation of the coming technological singularity 2030. In fact, 2029 is the exact date given by Ray Kurzweil, and these times given by Muhammad, because Muhammad is saying, he said in another series of prophecies, he says that the Imam Mahdi will appear, start his work age 30 to 40. And he says that Muhammad prophesied that the Mahdi would work for 30 to 40 years after starting work. And he's unknown, he's still unknown, but he's starting to get attention. But something happens that makes him Imam Mahdi. Something happens that allows him to catapult himself into a position to somehow change the world. That's what the prophecies are about, in provided by Muhammad. We think that there is a kind of coincidence between the exact dates given, a kind of a kind of advent around year 2000, and a kind of lower bound of something happening to this person, this Imam Mahdi character, that suddenly propels what he's predicting. Okay, he also says in other hadith that he in the beginning he is like a poor stranger, unknown and uncared for. He is completely unknown. He walks among the marketplaces, among the people, but no one knows who he is. So he's someone who's completely outside of the mainstream, and Muhammad gives very exact prophecies that for that kind of like that period in the wilderness of being unknown, he has a very small following of around 300 people that over time grows to several thousand. But then something happens in his 30, in the 30th to 40th year of his work. Something happens by which he suddenly explodes on a world scene from a relatively unknown person, barely recognized, to a kind of world figure. We think that happening coincides with the prediction of the creation of true artificial intelligence. And when you connect that up with the advent of true artificial intelligence actually fulfilling the rest of the prophecies of the physical transformation of the planet and this age of abundance, then it kind of makes sense. Okay, so there is another really interesting factor to this whole story, by which this is the ultimate twist. This is the ultimate twist in the tale of all time. Okay, what it is this: it's not just dates given by Muhammad and how this person appears, his life, and details of his life and stuff. It's astounding that Muhammad gives a very detailed physical description of this person. It's absolutely shocking, the level of detail that Muhammad gives for this person: his height, his overall build, his complexion, his hair, his forehead, his eyes, his eyebrows, his nose, his lips, his teeth, his cheeks, the nature of his arms and legs, how he gesticulates when he talks, even his thighs. I mean, my God, it's so detailed. You might think this is, so what? Well, the significance is this: if this de facto Mahdi can also create true artificial intelligence and has exactly these physical characteristics, and it's astounding, it's shocking, the level of detail. Okay, one, as prophesied by Muhammad, that would be the absolute proof of the power of God at the end of time. It would also prove that Muhammad is a true prophet. Now, if this kind of de facto Messiah character is accepted by Jews and kind of Israelis as the true Messiah, and they absolutely want him to be Messiah, but then their Messiah actually has the exact physical characteristics predicted by Muhammad, by the same token, it makes Muhammad, in the eyes of Jews, a true prophet. And, this is the ultimate twist in the tale. It means that Jews come to recognize, the prophethood of Muhammad. And this is the ultimate reconciliation of Islam and Judaism. And then, this is like Ishmael and Isaac, finally, the progeny of Ishmael and Isaac finally brought together. And that's the kind of mother of all twists. And I think, in terms of the situation in the Middle East, I mean, what we have, the facts on the ground, okay, what's happening, what we see in the news is ghastly and horrible. But when we examine the details of what's going on, the prophecies, the mystical beliefs of the protagonists in this unfolding drama, what we find is a kind of resolution. We find a way by which, almost the hand of God can engineer, this most unlikely of outcomes, that there is a common identity produced by this revival of the perennial wisdom, that Kabbalah is totally kind of explained through science. The mysteries of Muhammad, the behind Sufism and Shiism, is finally, kind of explained by science. That we then have this common identity between Jews and kind of Muslims and all the rest. We did China in the last talk, and we we will cover Europe and all the rest in future presentations of this series. It means that there is a common identity provided by the perennial wisdom. it also means there is a common ethical moral framework, this new sharia, this new rational basis for morality provided by this, this basis in the perennial wisdom. If there is a secret of the prophets and there is a teaching of the prophets, it's such a simple connection, isn't it? That the once the secret of the prophets is revealed through science and reason, then that provides the rational basis for the teachings of the prophets for the 21st century. And it also means that basically these ideas of equality, human dignity, equal human dignity for all denizens of the Middle East will finally become established. But if the person who is Mahdi for the Muslims and has exact physical descriptions given by Muhammad, which would then force Israel and Jews who basically have their own Messiah, who is also fitting the exact physical description given by Muhammad, it means that basically you can have a person who can be Messiah to the Jews and Mahdi to the Muslims. And what I'm saying is that is really the ultimate solution and the ultimate conclusion of this, historic process. This has, it really is the end of time. It really is the end of the age. And I think after that, I mean, it is advent of true artificial intelligence, exploration of the stars, kind of true, it is the return of humanity to the state before the fall. It's something dramatic. It is technological singularity. It is new heaven, new earth. It is, I mean, look, this is like the most outlandish sci-fi story, the most crazy Hollywood movie script. It's so crazy that any Hollywood movie studio would reject it. Okay, it's so outlandish. It is, Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land. It is Dune. It is basically Mahdi or the jihad, feels like Zadorat action for real. And it is Harry Potter. It is Dan Brown. It is all these things, Star Wars, the whole Joseph Campbell thing. But we think that there is a completely rational way by which this will unfold. And we think it's going to happen, and it's going to happen in due course. I think the happenings in the Middle East right now is almost like kind of like preparing the way for it. I think these are really like birth pains of something better to come, even though it might get worse before it gets better. So I think, so I'm an optimist. So we'll leave it there. And the next talk actually is going to be about artificial intelligence. So we're going to completely shift in another mode, and we're going to talk about the entire scene right now of the large language models, what's happening with all the protagonists, why some of the main characters are saying this isn't really the future of true artificial intelligence, what the main thinkers are saying has to be the case, and we'll try and fill in what we think has to be the case. So it's going to be kind of overview of the world, machine learning, AI scene, and then connect that up with what we talked about today. And we're going to do this before the end, next couple of weeks probably. So stay tuned, and we're going to be we'll be back. And I should thank my Patreons and thank my supporters, and so we've got loads more to come.